started with the roll call of the members. Stephen?
Here.
Lieutenant Britt?
Yes, I'm Paul.
Thank you. Diane?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Jay? Steve?
Here.
Lisa?
On the phone.
Okay. Letitia?
Here.
And Detective Sergeant Dubrow?
I'm here via telephone.
Great, thank you. First item, we'd like to welcome our newest Phase 2 Advisory Board member, Mr. Steve Birch. He is replacing Tricia Williams. Tricia accepted an opportunity with another agency, so welcome, Steve, and thank you so much for serving. All right. Next up, we will have a review of the meeting minutes from the last meeting, which was held on July 10th. Rachel, will you walk us through that, please?
Good afternoon. The last meeting was held on July 10th. The June 12th meeting minutes were reviewed and approved. Ms. Calvo provided an IB&B update, followed by a stakeholder outreach update by Mr. Samuel. Policy and decision review began on page 2 and continued on to page 3 with a total of 8 items. Financial review was given by Ms. Janice Timmons, followed by project updates with globals and batch and inventory teams, IFTA IRP, titles and registration, and dealer services, and that continued on to page 4. Ms. Sherilyn Dent gave an overview of the quarterly all-hands meeting that occurred on July 24th. The Phase 2 legal opinion document was not reviewed at the meeting. There was no communications update, and the meeting was adjourned at 3:01 p.m. And at the bottom of the minutes, you can see the items that were included in a packet and distributed to all members.
Any questions or corrections?
This is Lisa. I have a couple of corrections.
Okay. Would you like to go through them, or would you like to? Yes. would you-
On page 1, the visitor, it should be Ken Burton instead of Kevin.
Okay, we got that one. We'll correct that.
And then on page 2, where I expressed my concern about fraud and objected to the idea of providing cash or title transactions on behalf of the tax collector, I want to add that this is going to have a negative impact on tax collectors.
Okay.
And those are my corrections. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. We will get those corrected. Any other corrections? Okay, hearing the 2 corrections that have been identified, first correcting Ken Burton's name on page 1, and then on page 2, updating the bullet with Ms. Cullen regarding the negative impacts on tax collectors. Is there a motion to approve these minutes with the 2 identified corrections?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thanks, Stephen. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Same side. All right, we will mark these approved with the 2 identified corrections. Next on the agenda, we have Ms. Aileen Calvo with Ernst & Young to give us an IB&B update.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this report is the June report as of July 14th is the cutoff of the data for this one. Again, we're still at an amber risk rating. There were no additional facets reviewed this period and no new deficiencies identified. We do still have one deficiency left, and that's the program management at the governance level. SPI is at a 0.999, and we're only at 0.64% of late tasks, which is fantastic. So we still have those 2 yellow facets that are are impacted by the one deficiency in governance, but there are actions being taken right now to address those. We're just watching for the process to be implemented fully. So that's showing the overall status and where the deficiencies have gone over the project, which is really good. Trying to stay up with Janice. Key indicators are all right where we would expect them to be. And you will start to see now that we've gotten several iterations under our belt of data, we'll start to make those forecasting comments now. So still the 2 deficiencies left, or the 1 deficiency, 2 open items. Right there in the center of the bullseye, so that's where we want to see it stay. And the fact that that blue gap is going away, that's great, showing the planned work versus the actual work. So the actual work is catching up to the planned work. So this is a really good trend line. This is showing those late tasks as a trend, and that's a very deep slope. So very happy with the trend line happening there. And again, that's starting to show those kind of wild swings of the data starting to normalize. And now we can say that, we would forecast that a 7.1 days late, which is incredible for a project that's 5 years long. 6. So these are still the open, these are the actions that we're taking for the governance facet, that deficiency that we're talking about. Again, we're just watching the implementation of the new processes come into effect before we call that a win. So lastly, if we can take a look at the project schedule quality, 96.2, that's an incredible project schedule quality, not too many in that range. And the next one is the open period, so we look at it in chunks of 3 months ahead. And again, 95.2 for schedule quality, which is great. Are there any comments or questions on any of the things I covered? All right, thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda are the policy and decisions review. I think we have a couple of items to review. In your packet is the spreadsheet decision log that we picked. It's the document with the colorful columns. Who's up first? Portal?
On Portal 01, I'm sorry, Portal 02. Right now, this one is still pending legal opinion. This had to do with the adding functionality for banks and Sunshine State. We currently use screen processing and some of the real-time access for some of our private tag agencies. For Portal 04, we're still meeting with management on this issue. We did notate the concerns that were raised in the last advisory board meeting from Lisa Cullen and Lieutenant Britt. Next, we have Portal 05, which is a continuation of Portal 04. For Portal 06, which has to do with kiosk transactions, we did review the list of proposed kiosk transactions at the last Executive Steering Committee meeting. During that meeting, it was suggested by Mr. Stanley that we would probably have some separate meetings to further discuss this, as well as discuss it possibly during the upcoming meeting with the IT Coalition. Any questions on the portal?
Questions or recommendations from the board members? Any public comment?
At some point, can we see the list of proposed transactions? I assume probably after the IT Coalition.
Sure. For the kiosk?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
We will review that with the advisory board in this meeting, so yeah, you can
Okay.
see.
Cool. Thank you.
Next item?
Registration 1 has no update. Registration 4, no update from last meeting. Title 1, to pre-populate the event information, we've requested to close that, so there's no update on that. On page 5, registration 5, Should the system perform an inlets check? The recommendation from the advisory board was to discuss with FHP on how to handle this versus the clerk on the counter and slowing the transaction down. Lisa had some concerns on that, so I had sent an email to Sergeant Teslo. I had sent an email to Sergeant Teslo and Beth Brinkley, and they suggested the following. If you were on the counter with a customer and you did get a return on inlets, to indicate the system's having an issue, have a seat and go see the manager and have them contact law enforcement to see if anything needs to be done. Also, some offices have a law enforcement presence in their office, so you could just talk to the officer there to see if a seizure or an arrest was appropriate. Also, she said that the clerk could inform the customer that they're unable to process the transaction and refer them to the regional office to get the vehicle looked at further. Their concern was if the customer left the office and it wasn't handled, that it's just going to turn into a fraud investigation anyway, and that's just prolonging the issue. So their thought on it was try to stop it when the person's there the best way we can without letting the customer be alerted to anything that was going on behind the scenes. So that's their recommendation, but I don't know if there's any further discussion. We'll take this to ESC also this week.
Lisa, do you have any comments?
Yeah, do you want to contact law enforcement or FHP?
They just said law
And
enforcement.
I asked because I have some of my offices are in the city, some of them are in the county. So it would be different agencies that would take this up. So I just wanted to make sure that that was the thought process.
Yeah, they said law enforcement, Lisa, in their email. I'll confirm that.
Okay.
I was just talking to FHP from our end because, you know, they're on our team and
Right.
they're representing law enforcement, but I'll confirm that if it matters what agency they contact.
Any other questions, recommendations from the advisory board members? Any public comment? All right, next item.
Dealer Services 01. The Dealer Services team would like a decision to be made about changing the process the way they're handling dealer license numbers now. Currently, when a dealer license expires and then the 45-day delinquent period is over, and then they come back to the department to reapply later, they're being issued a new dealer number. So the thought process is rather than issue them a new number, to reuse the old number, because that way there's the feel that it will better allow us to track their past behavior, because it may be a way of masking past behavior by expiring and starting over. And a pro for the businesses, if you keep the same number, they wouldn't have to destroy their letterhead or what have you. So we wanted to bring it to the advisory board to see if we can make a recommendation. What are your thoughts on it?
This is Diane. I think it sounds like a great idea. The only concern that I would have as far as the dealer history information, will the system then link all the pertinent dealer license related history of information such as the garage liability, the bonds, the corporate officers, name changes, and really important I think here is the following of consumer complaints. So will all that history follow then under the same license number?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's an excellent idea.
Yes, ma'am. Same here.
Anyone have any questions?
It seems very reasonable from what you laid out. It seems very reasonable to do that.
Any public comment? All right. Next up, we will have a financial review. Janice?
for this month, this is the first month of our current fiscal year, which is 18-19. And for I'll go over phase 1 and phase 2, it just seems to help everyone that understands the programs. 18-19, our current budget that was approved is $7.5 million, with 6.9 of that going to contracted services. For the month of July, we had actuals of $604,940, and that was actually our budget for the month. So we are at a 0 variance. The next slide, which I know is new to a few people, is it shows the fiscal year total funding, fiscal year to date, actuals, and then month to date. And it also shows our remaining funds. So for phase 2, same thing, but for 18-19, we received $5 million in funding, with 4.3 of that going to contracted services. The actuals for the month of July were $70,270. That was also the budget. So again, we ended with 0 variance for the month. That was it, unless anyone has any questions. All right, Nathan, project update.
Yeah, sure, thanks, Kristen. So overall, all 6 teams have made the transition into requirements validation. So we're past the original requirements gathering where we documented all the processes, how those are going to work in the 2B system, the Orion system, all the screen mock-ups, and high-level user stories. So now what the teams are doing are working on the detailed business requirements, and we've broken the requirement validation schedule over the next year into 3 increments, and each team has they're all working on the first increment, so I'll give a preview of what each team is working on in the first increment. So team 1 is dealing with dealer licenses and manufactured housing. Increment 1 is manufactured housing. That will be a new addition to the Orion system because there's not any current system functionality that they're replacing. Team 2, the portal/fleet team, is working on some standalone apps like MVCheck, as well as registration services, tribe, fleet, and bulk registration. The IFTA IRP team is working on creating draft requirements for the procurement of the system. If you recall, the intention is to procure a commercial off-the-shelf software package to handle IFTA IRP functionality. So increment 1 would be coming up with the draft requirements, functional as well as technical requirements. Team 4 is the titles team. So the first increment for the titles team is basically just an original title transaction front to back. So that team will cover pretty much every screen that has to deal with an original title, and a lot of those screens will be reused in future transactions as well. So same thing with the registration team, Team 5, they're doing original registration. In increment 1, they're also covering renewals and specialty plates in the first increment. And then Team 6, which is the globals batch and inventory team, in the first increment, they're covering inventory processes. So those teams are doing the requirement validation for those now. A lot of activities, actually meeting with the team members a lot more regularly throughout the week. So folks in the business are seeing more meeting invites on their calendars. Participation has been pretty good overall, having people there. People are very engaged. The spotlight report that you have as the last page of your packet.
Can I stop you and could
Sure.
you repeat what the global batch team is working on?
They're working on inventory. So transferring inventory, creating bins, things related to inventory.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Lisa, just recently, and Jessica's not here today, but I'll go ahead. We had a presentation from Pride, who came and gave us a demo on some new functionality they have with this. They have developed as far as interfacing with our systems, and I guess for use by the tax collectors as well. And it looked really nice. So at some point, we will have Pride come once we think we're to the point they have a little more detail to show. Probably, reach out to you or someone else in the tax collector community to look at, or maybe the focus groups or whatever, to have them look at what's been presented to us as well.
Well, that's good news. I think that'll increase the security of that part of the
Yeah.
system. If
They-
we have that interface with them.
Yeah, they really have gone back, they listened to us, they had 2 or 3 meetings with us, and what they presented, we liked what we saw. So at some point, we'll get that for you and the focus group.
Okay, good.
Okay, so the stoplight report you have is the last page of your packet, is actually the stoplight report that we used up until we started validation. So as you see, we're 100% across the board for original requirements. By this meeting next time, you'll see a new version of this report that tracks the requirement validation increments for each team. The format will be slightly different because the due dates for the increment 1 started to be staggered. It's not the same due date across the board. We took that as a lesson learned from phase 1 to make sure that the teams that are actually reviewing these in a formal review manner would have some time to focus on each team individually. So the first due date is for the titles team on October 1st, and then every week or 2 after that, we start to stagger some of the due dates for the team, so we have time to focus on the review. Any questions about that?
All right, team updates, Alicia?
To add to what Nathan has said, dealer services team, we are continuing to meet every week, twice a week at least, and sometimes more. Like yesterday, we had to have a sidebar. What we're doing is trying to make sure that all of the SMEs understand what it is that we're looking for, because we're working in manufactured housing, which is a process that's been manual since 1976. So to try to get them in that electronic world, we're kind of working a little differently than maybe some of the other teams have had to work, because all of this is very new to them. And so we're going through the process to make sure that they understand what we're looking for, teaching them how to identify the different standard fields, and we're working on the user stories and the mock-ups, and we're getting there. I think after yesterday's meeting, you start seeing buy-in. They're being able to see stuff, because now that we're showing them real pictures of what it'll look like and the things that the new system will be able to do to them, it's working out very well, and we're getting very good participation from all of our team members. Any questions?
CT?
Yes, like Nathan said, we're working, the title registration team's working on original title transaction and original registration. We meet as well, the title teams, on Mondays and Wednesdays in the mornings and afternoons, and registrations on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the morning and afternoons. We are getting a lot of progress done with our meetings and stuff. We're going through our requirements, going through all our screens. Like Nathan said, for the original, we're dealing with a lot of screens that we will use over again. So we figured if we did the original transactions first, then we're going to touch a lot of the screens that we're going to need for other transactions. So a lot of screens to go through, documenting business rules, grooving them, getting them into Blueprint, getting them approved by the team. So everything's going pretty good. Really good involvement with our tax collector SMEs on the phone. They're really engaged with the team and, you know, speaking out on their behalf and their concerns and stuff from their end, and it's good.
Any update, the SMEs were here?
Yes, the SMEs were here the week of July 23rd for those 3 days. From what I understand from all the teams, they were very successful meetings. Also, there was representation for dealer services for manufactured housing and from the dealer regional office. So Felicia also had some folks here that she could work with in-house. So we're looking forward to scheduling our next meeting for them to come back up, and our next on-hands meeting that we also had. And that, we're trying to schedule that in October, I
Yeah, for
think.
October. We had a all-hands meeting. That's one of the things that we're doing across the board. We're getting everyone involved in phase 2, all in a room together to talk through where we're at as a program, where we're going. As we start to get closer to development, the topics will be more development focused. So we had our first one in July. We're looking to schedule the next one for October.
So I have a question about the titles and registration. I know in the beginning, and some of those issues we brought to the advisory board, there were issues concerning customer service versus fraud, and there was a lot of discussion about this surrounding the team. Where are we on that now? I haven't seen any new issues that were put on the log. Are those situations better? Is the team working through it? Because still, at some point, I'd like, of course, once we get further down the road, to let the advisory board review some of those as well, some of those decisions. But are we better now as far as the team working to balance those things out as we move forward?
Yes, we're still discussing it. It still comes up quite a lot, but now that we're thinking about business rules and stuff, we're trying to see what's going to work for customer service and also close the loops on the fraud end. So a lot of that stuff is, we're discussing it, but we're thinking of ways that we can fix it versus one way or the other.
I don't know if that was still an issue. I know we're in validation. I don't know if it was still coming up. So.
Yeah, it comes up, but we're making progress.
Okay.
Laura?
Hello. So for IFTA IRP, we are trying to get a COTS system. As Nathan had mentioned, we have been looking into an ITN, and we're trying to get the content for that ITN. We have our different functional areas marked out, so we're working with functional lead area folks to actually get that, the validations and the information that we want for those requirements. We are also working on benefits realization and a return on investment and ROI to pull together.
Judy?
Laura, just curious, is there a target date for the ITN? Or have you already dates around that? Or?
Do you have the?
It's going to be later this year, probably it'll be released. We can't release the ITN until we know we have funding. So what we're trying to do is at least complete the ITN and let it go through our process with purchasing and legal, get that finalized, so that when we do receive funding next year, we can drop it at that point.
Judy?
Good afternoon. The portal team this week, we're working on 2 functional areas. The first one is motor vehicle records requests. Customers will now be able to request motor vehicle records reports through the portal. Currently, all of this is done manually, either through mail-in, emails, walk-ins, or what have you. So we're going to automate that process, and it will be on the portal. The other thing we're also creating is a motor vehicle stop request. A lot of these also are requested either through mail or what have you, manually. Most of these requests come from like attorney offices or dealers who are requesting stops for like unpaid fees and things of that sort. So we're creating that standalone portal so that they can submit the request. It'll still go through a review process internally for us to go over. They're going to submit any supporting documentation as well. So there'll be a review process to actually apply it, but the initial request and the handling of that will all be automated. Any questions?
And we're also, as a follow-up to all the team updates, we, as you know, Lisa's been very helpful in getting us the focus groups from the tax collectors. We're at the point, we've got to have more meetings for phase 1 and for phase 2. So after the educational forum that we're going to have in Orlando, we're going to be scheduling focus group meetings with the tax collectors meet for phase 1, phase 2. I think we said we will be able to do the phase 1 via probably a WebEx or whatever, but phase 2 we're probably going to do in person, in a meeting. I think Lisa at the last meeting volunteered we could perhaps use her office, so we just need to give her some dates to make sure that her space is available, but we will be reaching out as well. The other thing that we're looking at as well that Lisa suggested is perhaps adding some IT members to the focus groups. So they're in there for those business decisions. If there's some things they think perhaps that can work better from an IT perspective that affect the tax collector operations, we'll hear that earlier in the conversation, because right now we pretty much update the IT coalition when we have our meetings with them, but this will give them involvement if they like throughout all of the focus group meetings as well. So I'll be working with Lisa on that. I've already talked to folks in the ESC, some folks about that as well. So we're probably going to be moving forward with that idea as well. So Any questions about the focus groups or any of the team updates before we go to questions and answers from the board or from the public? So,
And one more thing.
okay.
Yeah, one thing I was gonna bring up is that, the team's gonna start working on the release plan. So we'll have some sessions to work through, what the plan is for the actual development of the system when we transition to development, or the order of things the teams are gonna be working on. It might be slightly different than the order that we're grouping these things in. We're gonna take into account things like cross-team dependencies, any external decisions that need to be made, external testing partners. So, the first version of that would be coming out in the November timeframe, with a more final version toward the end of requirement validation. So we'll present that to the group when we have more details on that, but just be aware that those conversations are starting as well.
So at this time, do we have any, before I go to the public, any comment or questions from the advisory board members? Any questions? And any public comment, questions, or anything this time?
I have two comments, I think, or one question slash comment. The first one's an easy one.
State your name.
Sure. Andrew Bell, Florida Auto Tag Agencies. So the first has to do specifically with the batch registration uploads. So when, I think primarily it's the tax collectors, they get the mail processing is typically where it's done. They process it into a batch and they upload the .in file and the .out and all that good stuff. So kind of the request that I have is if they can be allowed to update insurance as part of that process as well. So right now, customers basically fill out their insurance information on kind of the slip, and so they have typically that information right in front of them. And so they would be able to then, put that information into that digital file that's part of the batch uploads. And so I don't know if Lisa's maybe already brought this up, but, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't make a joke. Yes, we've received that request,
Okay.
and it's one of the enhancements on the list for the high-speed process.
Okay, excellent. And then the second topic is more of a question. So as more dealers start to sign up with the EFS process, the inventory requirements kind of change for the offices. And so we've run into some pain points, I guess, where we get exceptionally low on our license plate inventory because a good portion of that inventory is residing with our dealers. And so I'm wondering, especially as I think in the state more dealers are going to be signing up for the EFS process, and so kind of the inventory reserve needs shift out into their locations and out of either the tag agencies or the tax collector's offices. Has there been any kind of discussion about how the baseline of needs is going to change over time to kind of account for that? It's kind of a nebulous question.
And I'm not sure, I know we have some calculations where we assess, like, I think some of that changed, wasn't that some of the heartburn last year with the reorder points and how do we determine what those numbers are? I don't remember where we last ended up, but I know that's on the team, for the inventory team, as one of the things for them to assess and figure out the best way to calculate what that need should be and how we determine that.
Do you, and we would be glad to hear any, in addition to, we're going to meet with the focus group that Lisa put together for us. That'll be Jessica's team, the inventory team. We can see what thoughts they have as well to make sure we got everything covered with the requirements that we have. But if there's anything additional, although we're in requirements validation, this will be the time if you have some thoughts or ideas of something you want to offer up as well.
As a solution, is that okay? All right, we'll put some thought into it. If I understand correctly, kind of the pain point from the department side is having to front the money, basically the $28 or whatever the cost is. Is that kind of where the pain point is from the department side with ordering the inventory? Or
I'm not really sure. Steve may know more about that than I do, but I'm not really sure.
So I guess I don't have a full understanding.
Bob Prislow, Total Technology. I can add to that as well. Over the past probably 6 months, I've gotten calls from dealers and tax collectors, both, Dealers saying that they're getting short on inventory. Tax collectors are saying they can't get any more from the department. And as I researched it, yes, there was discussion that there was looking at some changes in the analytics as to how much they need and how much every dealer, or for that fact, how much every tax collector needed as their inventory. What I had understood was in the original analytics, it was determined they were looking at the inventory as a whole. You know, what the tax collectors needed for all their offices, what each dealer needed for all their F&I personnel. They could have 4 or 5 different little inventories within each, dealership. So if they were all combined in one place, yeah, they probably need less, but you got different groups, and say the tax collectors, different offices. The original analytics looked at how many plates were issued as a whole based on how many they used, not on how much they needed in reserve for every location. I was told, whenever I heard it from a tax collector or from a dealer, just let the tax collector know to call and say they need more. When I did get involved in those particular cases, there were some motorcycle concerns, there was some shortage. I think it was close to the end of the budget year, which is always a tight time of the year, which I understand. But that was where the problem was. We had got feedback where some tax collectors were told, tell the dealers, they got more than they need, send some back to you. So it got to be different messages at different times. And I think part of the problem, from what I heard, was really just communications and an understanding of what the true needs were. I heard they were working on it, like you said. I never heard the outcome of that review. And we still hear it from time to time.
Well, this is Lisa. I do know that we worked with the department because there were several issues contributing to this. Of course, when the department gets into their year end, there's that period of time where we don't see inventory being shipped out. But there was also the fact that we went into a 10-year replacement cycle with the license plate. We haven't been using as many license plates as we're replacing this year. So there were several factors that contributed to the issues with the dealers. I would say when you look at the EFS agencies in the county, if the state is adding the dealer, then we need to automatically up the inventory because they need a starting inventory to begin with. And we discussed some things with the department, I think it's in the motor modernization side, but issues that we're facing on the tax collector side with the EFS dealers and the license plates. And I would like to ask Andrew and Bob, how would you feel about paying for them up front?
We would not have a problem with that at all, especially if it were to alleviate the pain points with us being able to get the inventory that we need. We would have no problem with that at all.
Obviously, I couldn't make... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't know if that's what we'll do, but I just wanted to just see what your thoughts were with it. I mean, it's a problem we continue to tackle.
And Bob Pressline, we've looked at that years ago, and it's been discussed probably ever since I've been involved for the last 15 years. For me to say yes today, obviously I wouldn't want to put out that kind of inventory, which you're already doing, but it's something we would definitely consider and take a look at and look at it as a whole. If it's going to significantly impact customer service, if it's going to keep the dealers and tax collectors in the state in a better position, it's something we would definitely consider. We'd have to look at the numbers, the costs, and everything associated with it before we would agree to it.
Thank
So
you.
was that a good political answer?
It was very political, Bob.
Lisa, I should have given you a little bit more than, I'm sorry. No, but I'll make sure to put that into the general email with a couple of ideas.
All right.
So, thank you.
And send that to the Motors Modernization. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or discussions? Anything? Recommendations? All right.
All right, we'll adjourn. Thank you very much. See you next month.
All right. Should be 16 minutes.
You want to talk?
Yeah,